Well, I can tell you that we are hoping to have some kind of agreement with the Prime Minister. And this prairie conservatism has always been about more than just numbers on a balance sheet. We don't ask for special treatment or handouts. We just want to be free. Free to develop and export that incredible wealth of resources we have for the benefit of our families.
Alberta just officially signed a multi-billion-dollar U.S. pipeline deal that could reshape North America's energy map. After $100 billion in lost projects and 15 years of federal chokeholds, Alberta finally broke free. This is Alberta's revenge moment. 1 million barrels a day, billions in revenue, and a message carved in steel.
Protecting the reliability and affordability of our electricity is of utmost concern for our government, because this is about protecting the lives and livelihoods of Albertans. And what did the feds tell us, Alberta, when we tried voicing our very real and serious concerns about these regulations? The issues that we have found in talking with the pipeline companies is that almost every one of them agrees that the best project for us, the highest value, easiest to build, that opens up the new markets in Asia would be a pipeline, a bitumen pipeline to the northwest BC coast.
It's hard to overstate just how much this moment stunned the entire country. Alberta tore up the old rule book by making an official pipeline deal with the U.S. For decades, every major pipeline in Canada had to crawl through endless federal red tape, political games, and environmental hearings that seemed designed to fail.
On the ground right now.
I can tell you that we have been talking with all of the pipeline companies since I first got elected and said that we would like to double our oil and gas production as we seek ways to reduce emissions.
Ottawa called the shots, and Alberta played the role of the frustrated engine, keeping the country's economy running while being told to slow down. But this time, the province didn't wait for approval. It went straight to Washington and came back with something no one thought was possible: a direct cross-border pipeline agreement with the United States. No federal middleman, no months of delay, just action.
Our government wants people from all industries, communities, and walks of life to shape the direction that this great province will take in the future.
Premier Danielle Smith pulled off what experts said couldn't be done. In one move, Alberta went from pleading for permission to setting the terms. Ottawa was caught off guard, shocked into silence, while Alberta stood at the center of North America's energy map. Federal politicians had spent years saying projects like Keystone XL were dead forever. Alberta just proved them wrong.
Multiple sources are telling our colleagues at Radio-Canada this morning that list, this initial short list, will not include oil pipelines.
To understand how explosive this is, you have to remember the wreckage that came before it. Alberta's history with pipelines reads like a graveyard of missed opportunities. Northern Gateway, gone.
Reporting no pipelines for now.
Energy East, canceled. Keystone XL, killed after years of work and $1.3 billion spent. Every time, it ended the same way: protests, politics, and paperwork. The result? $100 billion in lost investment and GDP that evaporated into thin air.
Well, I always live in hope, but you saw that the Bloc Québécois' first move is to say they'd partner with Mark Carney as long as he didn't build pipelines, and so that's what I'm signaling is that may result in some kind of stability to put a part of his agenda through, but it's not good for the country.
Then came Bill C-69, the infamous No More Pipelines law. It became a symbol of Ottawa's control, a message to every investor that Canada was closed for business. Alberta, the province that produces 84% of Canada's oil and fuels 60% of its natural gas, was forced to sit on the sidelines while its pipelines were blocked and its projects buried under climate optics. Meanwhile, other countries kept drilling, expanding, and profiting.
There's an unprecedented opportunity for us right now to build those new pipelines so that we have market access to the east, to build north so that we can potentially not only protect our Arctic, but also find a new route over to Europe. And yeah, we should be talking about building to the east so that our friends in Ontario and Quebec are not overly reliant on American supply of oil and gas for their needs. So I do hope that because there were a lot of things said during a campaign. I do hope that those are the messages that have gotten through, because I think if that is the case, we will all prosper. We will all benefit from that. Sadly, though, we have seen with his predecessors, many of the cabinet ministers who were at the table then are going to be at the table now. They had overly aggressive targets that were unachievable. If you try to set an emissions reduction target with a 2030 timeframe, that's only 5 years from now. The only way to achieve it is to do less, is to shut in your production. I've always advocated for a much longer time horizon, and we'll just see how pragmatic the Prime Minister is if we can find some alignment.
Right. Well, it certainly sounds like what Donald Trump has done has changed the perspective of a lot of people in the Liberal government.
For Alberta, it wasn't just an economic problem. It was an identity crisis. The province that powered the nation was being treated like a political inconvenience. Investors started packing their bags and moving to the US, where pipelines actually got built. Oil sands projects froze, jobs disappeared. The frustration grew with every canceled proposal until something finally snapped.
But it has, I think, caused everyone to realize just how dependent we are, that we don't have an energy east that would have allowed us to be solely reliant or self-reliant. And I think that that's the conversation that we're having, is how can we have... It should give us pause that we, in Eastern Canada, are overly reliant on oil that either has to come by way of the United States or has to be shipped in from overseas.
That breaking point turned into strategy. Behind the scenes, Alberta's leadership started rethinking everything. The politics, the partnerships, even the rules of the game. If the federal government wasn't going to back its energy industry, maybe it was time to do it alone.
Come from the left's perspective or the right perspective, you always have to be able to retain that right to say government is doing things you don't like.
And that's exactly what Danielle Smith did. She didn't ask for permission. She picked up the phone. While Ottawa was hosting another roundtable on climate reports, Alberta's government was sitting across from American energy officials discussing how to make this pipeline happen. Quiet talks turned into serious negotiations. Washington wanted reliability. Alberta had it. Both sides saw the same thing: opportunity.
Things that we need to do to address some of the objections, but I think that the Team Canada spirit's going to prevail in the end.
This new deal isn't just a piece of steel running across the border, it's a power shift. Alberta is finally breaking the bottleneck that's held back Canada's most valuable resource for years. We're talking about a province sitting on $9 trillion worth of oil reserves, enough to fuel North America for decades. And now, that wealth has a new route, straight into the American refining system.
But also working together to find access to new markets. We'll just be stronger by doing so.
The message couldn't be clearer. Alberta's done waiting, done playing by the rules that kept its economy locked down while others cashed in. The province that Ottawa once kept on a leash just cut the cord.
They told us too bad, we're going to do it anyway. In fact, they refused to work with Alberta or listen to Canadians while developing their net zero electricity regulations.
Now Ottawa is left trying to explain how one province outmaneuvered the entire federal system. The politicians who spent years talking about unity and collaboration are suddenly watching Alberta collaborate with Washington instead. And that's why this moment hits so hard. It isn't just about oil, it's about power.
In the absence of fairness and functionality, each province should be within their rights to explore ways to have greater control of their destiny and defend their interests while remaining firmly.
Alberta has just proven that when patience runs out, action takes over. What used to be a province waiting in line is now calling the shots. Ottawa can debate, regulate, and stall all at once. The reality on the ground has changed. The West just made its move, and the rest of the country is still catching up.
And I think that the prevailing view is that Canada should have a better deal.
So when the Americans reopened quiet talks about reviving the Keystone XL corridor, Alberta didn't just nod along, it threw in a plot twist. Smith looked across the table and said, "How about we skip the ghosts of canceled projects and just build a new one run by Alberta, not Ottawa." That was the mic drop moment. Alberta was basically saying, "We'll handle this ourselves." No federal ministers, no 5-year approval nightmares, no endless climate impact hearings that somehow never end. A clean deal, straight pipeline, straight partnership.
Instance, we get about around 850, 900,000 barrels of oil per day going through our pipeline.
And here's the best part. By the time Ottawa even caught wind of what was happening, the draft agreement was already sitting on a desk in Washington. Alberta didn't just go rogue, it went stealth mode. The province had effectively declared, if the nation won't act, the province will. It's one of those moves that changes how power works in this country. Ottawa's still trying to figure out how it happened, but by the time they started scheduling emergency consultations, Alberta had already started running the numbers.
In talking about wanting to build out this port to port to port economic corridor is what we're talking about, that would go from about somewhere around Port of Prince Rupert all the way through to Port of Churchill or thereabouts.
And those numbers, they're wild. Alberta already pumps 4.2 million barrels of oil every single day, more than several OPEC countries. That's around 1.5 billion barrels a year. It's the kind of volume that makes energy executives in Houston and Riyadh pay attention. And now, the new Alberta-US line is designed to move an extra 1 million barrels per day. That's another 365 million barrels a year, nearly a quarter of Alberta's entire output. And this isn't some backwoods pipe slapped together overnight. We're talking 42-inch industrial-grade steel, engineered to handle extreme pressure and high-volume flow. Next-generation safety systems, automated valves, AI-based leak detection. The whole thing sounds like it was built by Tesla engineers who got bored and decided to move oil instead of cars.
I'm saying that I'm going to convince David Eby of it because I know that this is good for the country. I know that he's on Team Canada, and I can't imagine in the end that if we meet the issues that have been raised by British Columbia, that he would go off Team Canada.
Before the federal government could even form a review committee, Alberta had already spent $350 million buying land, completing environmental studies, and laying the groundwork for early construction. That's before a single federal approval even hit a printer. Alberta knew waiting meant losing, and it refused to lose again. But here's where things get even juicier. Why did the United States say yes? It wasn't charity, it was math. Brutal energy math. The US might be the world's biggest oil producer, pumping 13.5 million barrels a day, but it also burns through nearly 20 million daily. That's a gap of 6.5 million barrels every single day, and someone's got to fill it. Right now, a chunk of that gap comes from Venezuela and the Middle East, not exactly the most stable or friendly suppliers. Venezuela's refineries are a mess. Their production keeps collapsing, and Middle Eastern shipments come with their own geopolitical bonus rounds. Translation: price spikes, political headaches, and risk. Meanwhile, Alberta's oil is sitting right next door, reliable, secure, and running through an allied border. Not only that, it's the heavy crude the US Gulf refineries were literally designed to process. American shale is too light for those systems. They need Alberta's thicker blend to maximize output.
The industry currently extracts about 1 billion barrels a year, accounting for 2/3 of Canada's total oil production.
And here's where the Americans' ears really perked up. Every barrel from Alberta is cheaper, cleaner, and politically safer than the alternatives. No shipping across oceans, no risk of sudden embargoes, no surprise coups in supplier countries, just a stable democracy next door selling oil at predictable prices. Washington calls that strategic stability. Ottawa calls it unauthorized. You can almost hear the bureaucratic gears grinding in the capital. Wait, the province made an international deal? Yep, they did. And the Americans said yes faster than anyone expected.
I just want to put it out there. If we had built Northern Gateway, which was approved and cancelled by Trudeau, if we'd built Energy East, which was advanced, but then pulled the plug because they couldn't see their way through to getting approval, if we'd built Keystone XL, if the federal government had advocated for 1 minute on our behalf to keep that pipeline going, we would have had an additional 2.5 million barrels per day of production today, which would be generated.
Because when you strip away the politics, this is a win-win. The US secures a long-term friendly energy source. Alberta secures direct market access, bypassing the federal chokehold that's haunted it for decades. And Canada? Well, it's now forced to watch as one of its provinces becomes a global energy player, without waiting for permission. What started as a few quiet meetings has turned into the biggest shock in North American energy politics in a decade. Alberta didn't just reopen the oil conversation, it flipped the table, redrew the map, and reminded everyone that power doesn't wait for approval slips. Ottawa was still writing talking points. Alberta was writing contracts. And in the end, that's the difference between discussion and deal.
For Albertans, these attacks on our province by our own federal government have become unbearable.
You could feel the tremor the moment Alberta signed the deal, not just in the markets, in the ground. A full-blown economic shockwave ripped through the country. Within weeks of the announcement, construction crews were being hired faster than you could refresh a job board. 15,000 new construction jobs right out of the gate. Welders, drivers, engineers, surveyors. Alberta's job market just went from coffee break to full throttle. And when it's built, another 2,500 permanent operations jobs are locked in, keeping the pipeline humming 24/7.
That if we have to get taxpayer dollars at the federal level to fund yet another pipeline, then that is a failure of the process.
We're talking about the kind of project that doesn't just employ people. It revives entire towns. Motels that sat half empty during the post-COVID slump are suddenly full again. Local diners are serving 3 breakfasts before 10 a.m. Mechanics, steelworkers, logistics managers, everyone's back in motion. Alberta hasn't seen this kind of buzz since the oil sands boom of the early 2000s.
We've already underwritten $750 million in that kind of equity ownership. We intend to do more. That's why we increased the loan guarantee to $3 billion, but that would be an essential part of it as well, yes.
And it's not just paychecks, it's momentum. The economists are calling it one of the largest GDP surges in decades. Tens of billions are being added to the national economy. Analysts say Canada's GDP could rise by up to 2% annually just from this project alone. That's not a bump. That's a national growth engine in a pipe. Every single day this line moves crude, 150 million is circulating through Alberta's economy. Paying for schools, roads, local businesses, and payrolls. That's real, tangible wealth, not theoretical charts from a policy paper.
But you really can't have true sovereignty until you have financial sovereignty.
For years, Alberta sent money east and got lectures in return. Over the last 15 years, the province has contributed $250 billion in federal revenue, with exactly 0 equalization payments coming back. None. Zilch. They built the highways, paid the federal bills, and got told to reduce emissions. Now, for the first time, Alberta gets to keep the profits at home. The dollars stay where they're earned. It's like someone finally found the return button on the national cash register.
The Alberta Next panel will put Albertans in the driver's seat. It will give them the rightful opportunity to decide how Alberta can become stronger.
But maybe the most surprising twist in this entire story isn't even the economics. It's who owns it. See, unlike the failures of Keystone and Northern Gateway, this pipeline didn't bulldoze its way through Indigenous lands while promising consultations later. This time, Alberta flipped the entire model. Indigenous nations aren't being consulted, they're co-owners. Through the Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation, communities were given access to loan guarantees so they could actually buy stakes in the pipeline. Not symbolic shares, not photo-op partnerships. Real equity, real board seats, real voting power. That means every decision, from routing to revenue, includes Indigenous voices at the table.
When we voted in a referendum to trigger an equalization renegotiation, Ottawa ignored us.
The federal government called the deal unauthorized, as if Alberta had broken some sacred rule. Washington, on the other hand, called it strategic. And the markets? They called it exactly what it is, inevitable. Because when one side dithers and the other delivers, money always follows action. Ottawa's so-called climate leadership, the tanker bans, the emissions caps, the infamous Bill C-69, they all look suddenly irrelevant. The oil is moving, the jobs are booming, and the federal talking points? They're collecting dust. Every new barrel that flows south doesn't just strengthen Alberta, it strengthens the Canadian dollar, weakens OPEC's grip, and boosts North American energy security. Alberta flipped the script. For decades, the provinces relied on Ottawa for direction. Now Ottawa's the one playing catch-up. Federal dependence just turned into provincial dominance. And for the first time in modern Canadian history, one province didn't just influence national policy, it rewrote it. Like this video and make sure to subscribe to the channel to get more updates on Alberta pipeline deal with the US.